Long before written history, a global trade network silently connected the world. Ancient merchants crossed vast oceans and trackless deserts, guided only by stars and stories, weaving civilizations together in an intricate web. This was a world without maps, yet it was a world deeply intertwined. By the end of this journey, you will see human history through a new lens, one that reveals a planet already buzzing with exchange thousands of years ago. How did an obsidian tool from Turkey end up in a distant desert settlement? What hidden routes allowed sacred jade to travel from Central America to the heart of Olmec power? We will uncover the evidence that proves our ancestors were global citizens. What does it mean to discover that our modern, connected world has such deep and ancient roots? A single piece of volcanic glass, sharp enough to slice through hide, tells a silent story of an epic journey, found far from its source in the mountains of what is now Turkey. This obsidian tool lay among the remains of a settlement hundreds of miles away. Its presence there is a quiet revolution. It proves that even in the Neolithic era, long before cities or written words, people were not isolated. They were connected by the most basic of human needs, the need for a better tool. This was the dawn of long-distance exchange, a system built not on money but on mutual benefit. The earliest networks moved essential materials: flint for fire starting, seashells carried astonishing distances inland to become valued ornaments, and salt, a mineral crucial for survival, traveled from ancient mines to distant communities. What is truly remarkable is that in some parts of the world, the evidence for this movement of goods actually predates the evidence for farming. This suggests that the impulse to trade, to seek out and connect with others for resources, might be as fundamental to humanity as planting a seed. It was not a luxury, it was a necessity. These initial contacts were the first delicate threads. A piece of obsidian did not just move from hand to hand, it moved through a landscape of social connection. Its journey required knowledge of routes, a form of negotiation, and a shared understanding of value. Each transaction, however simple, planted a seed. It established a route that would be walked again, a relationship that would be remembered, a precedent for exchange that would slowly, over centuries, weave itself into the fabric of civilization. This foundational era of barter and resource-seeking set the entire stage for the vast and complex webs of interaction that would one day bind entire empires together. That same human impulse to connect, which moved stone across continents, soon met the world's greatest barrier, the open ocean, and there it achieved something astonishing. More than 3,000 years ago, a people we call the Lapita looked out at the endless blue horizon and saw not an end but a beginning. Their story is one of the most ambitious voyages in human history. They did not just explore the Pacific, they colonized it, crossing thousands of miles of trackless water to find and settle islands scattered like stars across the sky. This was not a single desperate flight, but a sustained campaign of exploration and connection. Their vessel was the outrigger canoe, a masterpiece of maritime technology capable of carrying families, their belongings, and their future across the deep. These were not simple rafts, but sophisticated sailing craft, engineered to harness the wind and weather the might of the sea. With these canoes, the Lapita wove a network that spanned from the islands near New Guinea all the way to Samoa, a vast cultural web in the middle of the world's largest ocean. The proof of their connection lies in their pottery. Across this immense expanse of water, on islands separated by weeks of dangerous sailing, archaeologists find fragments of the same distinct style. This pottery is their cultural fingerprint, decorated with intricate geometric patterns pressed into the clay before firing. Finding a piece of this pottery on a remote shore is like finding a familiar signature, a message from the past that says we were here and we were connected. But they carried more than just clay. Their canoes were floating arks, transporting a vital cargo of domesticated plants like taro and yam, and animals like chickens and pigs. This was a transfer of an entire way of life. They also traded precious goods, shell ornaments valued for their beauty, and volcanic glass like obsidian, essential for making sharp tools. This exchange was the lifeblood of their network, a system that ensured distant communities could thrive, not merely survive. Maintaining this web across such staggering distances required more than just courage, it required genius. The Lapita were master navigators, reading the natural world as their map. They memorized the paths of stars, understanding how they rose and set over specific islands. They learned to read the subtle patterns of ocean swells, sensing how they changed as they wrapped around unseen landmasses. They watched for the flight of birds and the gathering of clouds, signs that pointed the way to land long before it was visible. This was a science passed down through generations, an oral encyclopedia of the Pacific. Their network was a testament to human ingenuity, a unified cultural sphere established in the Pacific millennia before European ships ever arrived. They did not just cross an ocean, they domesticated it, weaving its far-flung islands into a single community. While the Lapita were mastering the Pacific, another vast network was slowly taking shape on the other side of the world, one whose name you almost certainly know. We call it the Silk Road, but the truth is, when those famous camel caravans began their journeys, they were not blazing new trails. They were walking paths already ancient, routes worn deep into the earth by countless feet over thousands of years. Long before silk was ever traded, these same corridors moved a different kind of treasure. This was the world of the Bronze Age, a time when empires in Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley were rising to power. They were separated by towering mountain ranges and vast, unforgiving deserts, a distance that seems impossible to bridge, yet they were connected. How do we know? Because the objects they left behind tell a story of incredible journeys. In the tomb of an Egyptian ruler from around 1000 BC, archaeologists found something that should not have been there: silk. Scientific analysis confirmed it was Chinese in origin. How did a delicate textile from the Far East end up along the Nile over 1,000 years before the Silk Road's official opening? At the same time, in ancient Chinese burial sites, beautiful beads of Mesopotamian glass have been unearthed. This was not a one-way street. It was a vibrant, two-way exchange of the most valued luxuries of the age. But it was not just pretty things that moved along these routes. Innovation was a precious cargo too. The chariot, a revolutionary technology of both warfare and ceremony, did not appear in one place and stay there. It spread, its design evolving as it traveled from the Near East into China and beyond. Advanced methods for working with metal, for creating stronger bronze alloys, these secrets were carried by traders and artisans across the continents. This transfer of knowledge changed the course of civilizations, accelerating their development in a shared technological revolution. These prehistoric merchants were the true pioneers. They found the passes through the formidable mountains of Central Asia. They discovered the oases in the deadly Taklamakan Desert, a place whose name hauntingly translates to the place from which no one returns. They did this without maps, guided by the stars and the accumulated wisdom of generations. They carried jade from the mines of Central Asia to the courts of Mesopotamia. They transported turquoise from Persia to the workshops of the Indus Valley. They moved textiles and spices and ideas. these were the original global supply chains, the prototypes for everything that would follow. They demonstrate that the human drive to connect, to seek out the exotic, and to share innovation is not a modern invention. It is a deep-seated impulse, one that had already woven the continents together in a web of exchange long before history was ever written down. While the overland routes of Asia were thriving, another kind of network was being woven across the liquid highways of the Mediterranean. Here, a people from the narrow coast of what is now Lebanon became legends of the sea. The Phoenicians were not just sailors, they were maritime architects, building an economic and cultural bridge between the great powers of the East and the untapped resources of the West. Their world was defined by the cedar tree and the deep blue sea. From the famed forests of their homeland, they harvested towering cedars to construct the most advanced ships of the age. These were not simple trading vessels, but sturdy, seagoing ships with a deep hull and a single square sail, capable of carrying heavy cargo across vast distances and through treacherous storms. It was this mastery of shipbuilding that gave them the key to the Mediterranean. Their primary treasure was a color, a deep, vibrant purple that would not fade. Producing it was a monumental task. It required harvesting thousands of murex snails, crushing their shells, and carefully processing the gland that produced a mere drop of dye per snail. The result was a textile dye so valuable it became known as royal purple, worn only by emperors and the most elite members of society. This single, luxurious commodity funded their entire enterprise. But their ships carried far more than dye. They were floating warehouses of civilization's finest goods. They loaded their holds with beautifully crafted glassware, strong cedar timber, rich wines, and shimmering silver. From their bustling port cities like Tyre and Sidon, they sailed west, establishing a string of trading colonies that stretched all the way to the coast of Spain. These outposts were not just lonely forts, they were new cities, hubs of commerce that connected the Mediterranean world into a single, integrated market. According to accounts written by later historians, their ambition may have even led them to attempt the impossible. One story claims a Phoenician fleet, commissioned by an Egyptian pharaoh, successfully circumnavigated the entire continent of Africa. Whether this epic 3-year voyage is fact or legend, it speaks to the incredible reputation they held as the undisputed masters of the sea. Their most enduring legacy, however, was not a product they carried in their ships, but an idea they carried in their minds. To manage the complex record-keeping of their vast commercial empire, they developed a simple, revolutionary system of writing, the Phoenician alphabet. Unlike the cumbersome cuneiform or hieroglyphic systems of the time, their alphabet used just over 20 symbols to represent consonant sounds. This was a tool of pure efficiency, designed for merchants and traders. As their ships moved from port to port, this script traveled with them. It was so practical and easy to learn that it was adopted and adapted by their trading partners, most notably the Greeks who added vowels. This Greek adaptation would, in time, become the foundation for the Latin alphabet used by much of the world today. So when you read these words, you are seeing the direct, living legacy of those ancient sailors. The Phoenicians show us with stunning clarity that trade networks do not just move objects. They are the very conduits of culture, technology, and the foundational ideas that shape our world. Far to the north, beneath dark pine forests and along misty coastlines, another precious material was being gathered, one that would weave its own web across the continent. This was amber, the gold of the north. Not a stone, but fossilized tree resin. It captured the sunlight, holding it in a warm, translucent glow. To the ancient peoples of the Baltic region, it was a piece of captured light itself, valued for its beauty and believed to hold powerful, magical properties. From these northern shores, a desire for this golden substance sparked a trade network that would stretch for thousands of miles, connecting worlds that seemed to have nothing in common. The journey of a single amber bead is a story written in geography. It began with a hunter or fisher gathering the raw pieces from the beaches of the Baltic Sea. From there, it moved south, not along a single road, but along a web of interconnecting trails and rivers. These were the amber routes, a series of paths that navigated dense, untamed forests and crossed formidable mountain passes. The beads traveled from hand to hand, from settlement to settlement, in a long chain of barter and exchange. The ultimate proof of their incredible journey lies in the most unexpected places. In the magnificent shaft graves of Mycenaean kings in Greece, dating back over 3,000 years, archaeologists have found beads of Baltic amber. Even more astonishing, in the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun, a beautiful carved scarab made of this northern gold was placed among his treasures. How did this organic gem from the cold Baltic reach the sun-baked Nile? Its presence is silent, undeniable evidence of a chain of connection so long it seems to defy belief. This exchange was never a one-way street. The North had something the sophisticated South desperately wanted, and the South had goods that transformed the North. In return for the amber, luxury items and vital technologies flowed back along those same routes. Bronze, the strong alloy that defined an era, traveled north in the form of ingots and finely crafted weapons. With it came the knowledge of metallurgy, changing local technologies forever. Mediterranean glass beads, intricate jewelry, and even wine-drinking sets made their way into the hands of northern chieftains and elites. This was not just trade, it was a profound cultural exchange. The arrival of these exotic goods altered local customs, influenced art, and shifted social structures, creating new centers of power and prestige along the amber routes. What this northern network reveals is a powerful truth about human motivation. The desire for a beautiful, magical substance was enough to overcome immense geographical and cultural barriers. It motivated people to establish relationships of trust across vast distances, to learn the languages of strangers, and to navigate landscapes that were often challenging and dangerous. The amber routes demonstrate that value is a powerful engine for connection. A small, sun-warmed piece of resin from the Baltic coast became a commodity so desired that it could link the world of European hunter-gatherers with the palatial economies of Bronze Age Greece and the divine kingdoms of Egypt. This was a global network in action, proving that long before globalization was a modern concept, our world was already intimately and beautifully intertwined. The world's greatest desert was once a sea of grass. Thousands of years ago, the Sahara was a greener place, and across its vastness, the first trade routes were not traversed by camels, but by horses and oxen. This was a trade born from a powerful geographical paradox. To the south lay the gold-rich rivers and forests of West Africa. To the north, on the Mediterranean coast, were civilizations with an insatiable demand for that precious metal. And in the desert itself, there was a treasure just as vital, salt. This simple mineral, essential for preserving food and sustaining life, was mined from the blistering heart of the Sahara and carried south, where it was worth its weight in gold. This exchange of southern gold for northern salt created an economic engine powerful enough to build empires. The kingdoms of Ghana and later Mali rose to immense wealth and power, not in spite of the desert, but because of it. They controlled the trade routes, taxing the goods that moved along them and growing into legendary centers of commerce and culture. The evidence for these ancient connections is etched in stone. Deep within the central Sahara, on rock faces now surrounded by endless sand, are paintings of horse-drawn chariots. These images are ghostly echoes of a time when the desert was more passable, a permanent record of contact between North Africa and the peoples of the interior. These routes were not just for goods, they became channels for the movement of people and ideas. Centuries later, it was along these same established corridors that Islamic scholars and traders traveled, bringing their faith, their knowledge of astronomy and mathematics, and their written script to West Africa. This cultural exchange transformed the region, leading to the founding of great centers of learning like Timbuktu. The Sahara was never an empty void. It was a bridge, a dynamic space that connected the Mediterranean world with the complex civilizations of sub-Saharan Africa. This vast desert, which appears on maps as a barrier of empty yellow, was in reality one of history's most formidable and fruitful highways. A great city lay silent, its streets perfectly aligned and its warehouses full of standardized weights. This was the Indus Valley civilization, a contemporary of Egypt and Mesopotamia that mastered a different kind of power, the power of precision and trade. While others built pyramids and ziggurats, the Indus people built a society on meticulous order, a system that could not have functioned without a vast and reliable network of exchange. Their cities, like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, reveal a culture obsessed with measurement. They used uniform, carefully graded stone weights across their entire territory, a system so consistent it suggests a centralized authority managing commerce. This was not a collection of isolated villages but a unified economic zone, a civilization built for business, but their vision extended far beyond their own rivers. Across the treacherous waters of the Arabian Sea, their influence was also being felt. In the ruins of Mesopotamian cities like archaeologists have made startling discoveries: small, carved stone seals inscribed with elegant, undeciphered script and images of mythical beasts. These are Indus seals, the calling cards of a merchant or an official from a distant land. They are the physical proof of a connection that history nearly forgot. Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets provide the other half of the story. They speak of a prosperous land called Meluha, a place from which they imported exotic treasures. While we cannot yet read the Indus script to hear their side of the tale, the Mesopotamian records give us a shopping list of this ancient trade. From Meluha came sturdy timber for construction, gleaming ivory for intricate carvings, and brilliant carnelian, a deep red gemstone that was drilled and polished into beautiful beads. To transport these goods, the Indus people must have possessed a fleet of robust, seagoing ships, vessels capable of navigating the monsoon winds and the open ocean. This was not casual coastal hopping, but a deliberate, long-distance maritime enterprise. The entire system, however, was fragile. Around 1900 BC, the Indus Valley civilization entered a period of decline. Its great cities were gradually abandoned, and its meticulously planned order faded. The reasons are still debated by scholars, with theories pointing to shifts in river courses and changes in climate patterns. Whatever the precise cause, the effect on trade was catastrophic. The flow of goods from Meluha to Mesopotamia slowed and then stopped. A major artery of the Bronze Age global economy had been severed. The silence that followed is as profound as the civilization's achievements. We are left with those enigmatic seals and an unreadable script, a locked archive of their history. If we could ever decipher their writing, what would we learn? Would it reveal the names of their trading partners, the treaties they signed, the stories of their sailors? The lost language of the Indus people may hold the final, breathtaking details of how deeply interconnected our world truly was, even at the dawn of civilization. Some of the most enduring monuments from the ancient world are made of stone, yet they speak a language of ideas. scattered across the globe, from the windswept plains of Europe to the highlands of Turkey and the coastlines of Korea, are megalithic structures. These massive stone circles, towering dolmens, and immense burial tombs share a startling family resemblance, despite being built by cultures separated by thousands of miles and with no known direct contact. This phenomenon presents one of history's most captivating puzzles. It suggests a different kind of trade network, one that moved not goods, but blueprints for the soul. How did the knowledge of how to quarry, move, and raise multi-ton stones appear in so many different places? The most compelling answer is that people were trading ideas. Established routes used for moving obsidian, amber, and shells also became highways for architectural concepts and spiritual beliefs. The movement of a single merchant or a group of traveling artisans could carry the seed of an idea from one community to the next. This seed would then take root in local soil, adapting to local materials and beliefs, but retaining the core principle of building with massive stone. The knowledge of leverage, of sledges and rollers, of shaping rock with other rock, this was a technology too valuable not to share. It was a trade in intellectual capital that literally reshaped the prehistoric landscape. The connections run even deeper than the stones themselves. Consider the alignments. Stonehenge in England is famously oriented to the solstice sun. Across the sea in ancient Egypt, the Great Pyramid was precisely aligned to the cardinal points. Far to the east, at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, stone pillars carved with animals are arranged in circles that also seem to track celestial movements. These are not random placements. They point to a shared and likely exchanged understanding of the cosmos. The cycles of the sun, moon, and stars held profound meaning for these early societies, dictating planting seasons, religious ceremonies, and their very place in the universe. This cosmic knowledge was perhaps the most valuable commodity of all, carried along the same paths that moved more tangible treasures. What we are seeing is a network of the mind. The global distribution of megaliths is the physical evidence of a conversation happening across millennia. A community in one region would develop a new way to honor their ancestors or their gods, using the most permanent material they could find. That concept, that architectural solution, would then travel, passed from one group to another, evolving and adapting along the way. It demonstrates that our ancestors were not just connected by their need for resources, but by a shared human drive to create meaning, to seek order in the heavens, and to leave a mark on the world that would endure long after they were gone. These silent stone sentinels are the ultimate testament to a prehistoric world already woven together by the most powerful force of all, the trade of an idea. A single piece of volcanic glass can be traced back to the exact mountain it came from. This is the unique power of obsidian, a material that carries its own passport in the form of a distinct chemical signature. Each volcanic eruption produces obsidian with a specific blend of elements, a geochemical fingerprint that allows archaeologists to pinpoint its origin with remarkable precision. By analyzing an obsidian tool found hundreds of miles away, they can say with certainty, this came from that valley, that specific flow. This transforms a simple artifact from a silent object into a detailed travel log. The map of its journey is a map of ancient human connection. From the rich sources in central Anatolia, a vibrant trade network radiated outwards. Tools made from Cappadocian obsidian have been found in settlements across the Levant, a land bridge connecting continents. Even more striking, Anatolian obsidian has been unearthed in the foundational cities of Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. This was not a random scattering of goods. It reveals a deliberate, intricate, and long-lasting system of exchange. Think of it as a prehistoric supply chain operating over a geography without borders. The distribution of this one material allows researchers to model the routes that must have existed. They can trace the paths up into the highlands, across river fords, and through mountain passes. It shows the economic reach of a small settlement, proving its connections stretched far beyond the horizon its inhabitants could see. But this was more than just an economic transaction. The consistent movement of obsidian over centuries suggests established relationships, perhaps even alliances between distant communities. It hints at shared knowledge of the landscape, mutual trust, and a system of value that was recognized across cultures. This volcanic glass was a commodity, yes, but its trail is the ghostly outline of a social network, a web of interaction that made the ancient world far smaller than we ever imagined. The story of a simple cutting tool, therefore, is not just a story of survival. It is a microscopic fragment of a much larger narrative, one that reveals our planet was already woven together by the threads of trade, creating a connected economy thousands of years before the first coin was ever minted. That same desire for a beautiful object which moved amber across continents also applied to something you could not even see. The ancient world was driven by a hunger for scent and flavor, a quest for spices that would push humanity to the very edge of the map. Cinnamon, pepper, and cloves were not just seasonings, they were magic. They could preserve food, mask the taste of aging meat, and were believed to hold medicinal and even spiritual powers. In an age without refrigeration, their value was beyond calculation, often literally worth their weight in gold. This insatiable demand created a shadowy, multi-stage network that stretched from the rainforests of Southeast Asia to the dining tables of Rome. The journey of a single peppercorn was an epic in itself. It began in the lush groves of India's Malabar coast. From there, it was loaded onto Indian vessels that braved the monsoon winds to cross the Arabian Sea. Upon reaching the ports of Yemen or Oman, the precious cargo was transferred to Arab traders, the master intermediaries of this maritime Silk Road. These merchants guarded the secrets of the eastern seas with their lives, spinning fantastical tales to protect their profits. They claimed cinnamon was gathered from the nests of giant birds in distant, unreachable lands. This was a deliberate smokescreen, a corporate secret on a civilization-wide scale. Their dhows, with their iconic triangular sails, then carried the spices up the Red Sea, where they were hauled overland to the Nile and finally to the bustling markets of Alexandria, the gateway to the Mediterranean. It was here that Roman merchants waited. The Roman appetite for pepper was colossal. It appears as a staple in the cookbook of a gourmet named Apicius, used to flavor everything from meats to desserts. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder complained bitterly about the empire's vast wealth being drained to India and Arabia for such luxuries. This economic drain was a powerful engine for connection, linking the heart of the Roman Empire with the kingdoms of South India in a direct and sustained commercial relationship. This spice trade was the ultimate test of human ingenuity. To move a lightweight, high-value commodity across such immense distances required revolutionary advances. Ship designs evolved to be larger and more seaworthy, capable of carrying vast cargoes across the open ocean. Navigators learned to harness the predictable yet violent monsoon winds, sailing with them to India and then waiting for their reversal to sail home. This was not coastal hopping, it was a calculated, high-stakes gamble across the deep sea. The allure of spice did not just connect empires, it actively expanded the known world, pushing sailors to venture further than ever before in pursuit of flavor and fortune. The simple, everyday act of seasoning a meal was in fact the end point of one of history's most complex and daring global enterprises. Deep within the tombs of ancient Chinese kings, a stone of heaven was laid to rest. This was jade, a material revered not for its utility, but for its soul. Its cool, smooth surface and ethereal translucence were thought to contain the very essence of life force and eternity. To possess it was to hold a piece of the cosmos, a bridge to the ancestors and the divine. This profound spiritual hunger for jade created one of the world's oldest and most enduring trade networks, a web of sacred exchange that wove East Asia together long before the Silk Road was a whisper on the wind. The journey of this sacred stone began in some of the most remote and challenging landscapes on Earth. The most prized jade, a pure, creamy white nephrite, came from the riverbeds of Cotton, an oasis city nestled at the treacherous foothills of the Kunlun Mountains in Central Asia. Getting there was a monumental task requiring travelers to cross the unforgiving Taklamakan Desert. Yet, for over 2,000 years, people made this perilous journey, drawn by the promise of the stone that sang to the spirit. How did they manage such a feat? They did not travel blindly. They followed established routes, paths of knowledge passed down through generations of traders who knew the locations of secret waterholes and the safest passages through shifting sand dunes. The raw boulders, once extracted from river valleys or quarried from mountainsides, were immense. Transporting them required immense effort, likely rolled onto sledges and pulled by teams of oxen or humans across vast distances. This was not a trade for the faint of heart. It was a dedicated pilgrimage for a material believed to be more valuable than life itself. Once it reached the workshops of ancient China, the rough stone was transformed through unimaginable patience. Lacking metal tools harder than the jade itself, artisans used a technique that seems almost magical to us today. They employed abrasive sands and simple drills, patiently grinding and polishing the stone for months, even years, to reveal the ritual objects within. They created discs with a central hole representing the sky, and Kong, square tubes with a circular interior symbolizing the earth. These were not mere decorations. They were sacred instruments used in ceremonies to communicate with the powers of the universe, buried with rulers to ensure their safe passage and eternal power in the afterlife. But the reach of this network did not stop at the borders of ancient China. The same distinct Cottonese jade, identified by its unique chemical signature, has been found in elite burial sites from the Korean peninsula to the Red River Delta of Vietnam. A noble in ancient Korea might be buried with a jade ornament whose stone began its life in a Central Asian river, thousands of miles away. This shared value for a specific material created a pan-Asian cultural sphere. It was a silent agreement spanning different languages and kingdoms that this particular stone held ultimate significance. The trade routes did not just carry the raw material. They carried the artisans, the ideas, and the very blueprints for its meaning. The artistic styles of jade carving, the specific shapes of ritual blades and pendants spread along these routes. So too did the spiritual beliefs associated with the stone, the concepts of immortality, virtue, and cosmic harmony. A king in Vietnam, by adorning himself with jade, was not just displaying wealth. He was connecting himself to a wider world of shared power and belief, participating in a cultural language that everyone from Central Asia to the Pacific Ocean could understand. This was the true power of the Jade Network. It demonstrates that the most powerful connections are not always built on economic necessity alone, but on a shared search for meaning. The hunger for a beautiful, sacred stone created highways of culture, linking distant peoples through a common vision of the divine, and proving that long before empires officially met, they were already speaking the same silent, beautiful language. From the cool, smooth touch of jade to the warm, coiled form of a seashell, ancient people found value in the natural world's most beautiful creations. Certain shells harvested from the waters of the Maldives or the Pacific Northwest became more than just ornaments. they became the world's first true currency, a system of money that crossed oceans and continents. The cowrie shell, with its glossy, porcelain-like surface and distinctive slit, became a universal symbol of wealth. Its journey is a map of prehistoric finance. These shells were gathered in the Indian Ocean, then transported in the millions to distant markets. Archaeologists have found them in ancient burial sites in China, used in royal divination rituals. They have been unearthed in West Africa, where for centuries they served as the primary currency for everything from everyday goods to the most solemn transactions. A shell from a Maldivian lagoon could end up purchasing salt in the Sahara or silk in a Chinese marketplace. This was an economy built on a shared belief in a simple object. What made shells so perfect for this role? They possessed all the qualities of good money. They were durable, surviving long journeys without breaking down. They were difficult to counterfeit, as their specific shape and appearance could not be easily replicated far from the sea. Most importantly, they were standardized. A cowrie shell from one beach looked almost identical to a cowrie shell from another, creating a natural unit of account that everyone could understand and trust. On the other side of the world, the native peoples of the Pacific Northwest used dentalium shells, harvested from the deep ocean, as their high-value currency. These long, tusk-shaped shells were strung on strings, and their value was measured by the length of the strand. This system was so precise and so widely accepted that it facilitated trade from the coast far into the interior, moving goods like obsidian, furs, and dried fish across a vast economic network. The existence of these shell money economies reveals a startling level of ancient sophistication. Different cultures, speaking unrelated languages and living worlds apart, independently arrived at the same conclusion. They all recognized that a small, beautiful, and rare object could stand in for value itself. This mutual recognition created an early form of globalization. It meant a merchant did not need to speak the same language as his trading partner. He only needed to show the shells, and their worth was instantly understood. This was a financial revolution that connected societies in a web of shared trust, proving that the roots of our global economy are not buried in gold, but in the humble, enduring beauty of a shell. A revolutionary idea moves even faster than a caravan of spices. The most profound cargo carried along these ancient routes was not silk or amber, but knowledge itself. The blueprint for a new technology, once unleashed, could ripple across continents, fundamentally reshaping every society it touched. The secret of bronze was one such idea. It began in the highlands of the Near East, where artisans first discovered that smelting copper and tin together created an alloy far stronger and more versatile than any stone. This was not a single invention, but a cascade of them. The knowledge of how to find these ores, how to achieve the scorching temperatures needed to melt them, and how to cast the molten metal into molds, this entire complex process began to travel. It moved with migrant metalworkers and along the same exchange paths used for precious stones. From its point of origin, the technology of bronze spread west into Europe and east across the Iranian plateau toward the Indus Valley. In each new region, local innovators adapted the recipes, creating their own unique styles of axes, spearheads, and ceremonial vessels. This shared technological leap created a new international age, the Bronze Age, binding distant cultures together in a common revolution of material science. On the open plains of the Eurasian steppes, another innovation was being perfected, one that would redefine speed and power. The chariot was more than a vehicle. It was the ultimate status symbol and a terrifying engine of war. Lightweight and agile, with spoked wheels that made it remarkably fast, it was first developed by nomadic peoples, but it did not stay on the steppes. The concept and the skilled craftsmen who knew how to build these sophisticated machines traveled south, through the mountain passes of the Caucasus and across the trade routes of the Near East. The chariot arrived in the hands of established empires. The Egyptians adopted it, and it transformed their military, allowing pharaohs to project their power across vast distances. At the same time, through connections we are still unraveling, the core technology reached the Shang dynasty in China. There, local artisans crafted their own magnificent versions, burying them in royal tombs to serve the emperor in the afterlife. This was not merely the trade of a new tool. It was the transfer of an entire tactical system, a new way of thinking about combat, prestige, and control that echoed from the Nile to the Yellow River. Perhaps the most transformative idea of all was the concept of making language permanent. In the bustling cities of Mesopotamia, the need to record transactions sparked the invention of writing. The earliest forms were simple pictographs pressed into clay tablets to track shipments of grain and livestock. This revolutionary system of record-keeping was too powerful to remain contained. The idea of writing traveled down the Euphrates and was adopted and brilliantly adapted by the Egyptians. They transformed it into their own complex system of hieroglyphs, using it to record everything from tax rolls to prayers for the gods. Far to the east, the concept seems to have influenced the development of the still undeciphered script of the Indus Valley. In each case, the core idea was the same: to capture speech in a visible, lasting form. But each culture molded it to fit their unique language and worldview, creating new scripts as distinct as the civilizations themselves. This was the ultimate intellectual exchange. The trade in technologies like bronze, the chariot, and writing did not just change what people could do, it changed what they could think and what they could become. It accelerated the pace of history, creating a chain reaction of innovation that connected human ingenuity across the entire ancient world. These silent trade routes were ultimately carried on the backs of a new kind of partner. The history of long-distance exchange is inseparable from the story of animal domestication. It was a partnership that transformed the scale of human ambition, turning difficult footpaths into commercial highways. The donkey, first tamed in northeast Africa, became the engine of the earliest overland networks. Hardy, sure-footed, and capable of carrying substantial loads, these animals could traverse rocky highlands and arid plains where wheeled carts could not go. They moved bulk goods like grain, timber, and copper ore, commodities that were too heavy for human porters to carry in meaningful quantities. This was the beginning of a logistical revolution, where the value of a trade good was no longer limited by the strength of a person's back. Then came the horse, a creature that redefined speed itself. Originating on the steppes of Central Asia, its domestication unlocked a new dimension of connectivity. Mounted messengers could cover distances in days that would take weeks on foot, allowing for faster communication between trading centers and a more rapid exchange of ideas. The horse-drawn chariot, as we have seen, became a vehicle of both war and elite status, a high technology that spread rapidly along trade corridors. But the true champions of the most extreme environments were the camels. Two distinct species were domesticated to conquer two different kinds of desert. In the cold, high deserts of Central Asia, the two-humped Bactrian camel, with its thick winter coat, became the sole means of crossing the formidable passes and arid basins of the Silk Road. Its ability to endure freezing temperatures and go for long periods without water made it the only pack animal capable of such journeys. Meanwhile, the single-humped dromedary camel was perfectly adapted for the scorching heat of the Sahara. Its wide, padded feet prevented it from sinking into the sand, and its legendary ability to store water and fat in its hump allowed it to survive marches of over a week between oases. The introduction of the dromedary to North Africa around 2,000 years ago was a turning point in world history. It did not just improve Trans-Saharan trade, it created it, enabling the regular, large-scale exchange of gold, salt, and other goods that built the empires of West Africa. These animals were more than just beasts of burden, they were living technology. A single Bactrian camel could carry a load of 400 pounds, transforming the economics of cross-continental trade. A caravan of 100 camels could move 20 tons of cargo, the equivalent of a small ship, across the heart of a continent. This capacity made the trade in bulk commodities not just possible but profitable. The animals themselves became a form of wealth and a vital trade item. Prized breeds were exchanged between cultures to improve local stocks, spreading genetic resilience and specialized traits across the ancient world. The spread of the domestic horse from the steppes into the Middle East and Europe is a story of trade in living assets, as highly valued as any metal or gemstone. This deep collaboration between human and animal reveals a fundamental truth. Our ancestors did not conquer these vast distances alone. They walked alongside their donkeys, rode their horses, and trusted their lives to their camels. The great trade networks that connected the world were a shared achievement, a testament to a partnership that carried the weight of civilization itself. Far from the known jade routes of Asia, a different kind of sacred stone was being sought in the Americas. In the humid lowlands of Mexico's Gulf Coast, the Olmec civilization, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, was captivated by a unique treasure, a vibrant blue jade. The mystery is not just its beauty, but its journey. The only geological source for this specific celadon blue jadeite is in the Motagua River Valley of Guatemala, a rugged terrain separated from the Olmec heartland by hundreds of miles of dense jungle and towering mountains. Yet in ancient Olmec centers like La Venta, archaeologists unearth exquisite artifacts, from polished celts to intricate masks, all carved from this distant, otherworldly stone. Its presence there is a silent testament to a web of exchange that functioned with remarkable efficiency over 3,000 years ago. How did they accomplish this? The most likely answer lies in the water. Rather than attempting direct overland treks through impassable terrain, the Olmecs almost certainly mastered a riverine and coastal network. Imagine the raw jade being carefully transported from the Motagua quarries to the Caribbean coast. From there, skilled Olmec mariners would have navigated their sturdy dugout canoes along the shoreline, heading north and then west, eventually entering the river systems that flowed into the Gulf of Mexico, bringing them home. This was not a random expedition, but a regular, established trade route, a liquid highway for a stone that was considered more precious than gold. For the Olmecs, this blue jade was not merely a luxury. It was a substance of profound spiritual power. In their worldview, the stone's color and cool, watery sheen directly connected it to the fundamental forces of life. It represented rain, fertile maize, and the life-giving essence of rivers and springs. To possess it was to hold a piece of the divine, a direct link to the powers that sustained the world. Rulers and shamans used jade objects in their most important ceremonies, and they were buried with them to signify their eternal connection to these cosmic forces. This deep cultural hunger transformed the control of the jade trade into a primary source of political authority. The elite who could secure a steady flow of this sacred material from its distant source held immense power. They could distribute it as a symbol of favor, use it to legitimize their rule, and reinforce their role as the essential intermediaries between the people and the gods. The quest for Olmec blue jade reveals a sophisticated economic and spiritual network operating on a continental scale. It proves that the Americas, long before European contact, were a landscape of dynamic, long-distance interaction, where the desire for a single, shimmering blue stone could build a civilization and connect worlds. A sweet potato baked in an earth oven in Polynesia carries a genetic story that whispers of an impossible journey. This humble tuber, a staple of the South Pacific, has its wild ancestors in the Americas. Its presence across the ocean, centuries before European ships arrived, is one of history's most tantalizing puzzles. It suggests that the vast Pacific was not an absolute barrier, but a highway for some of the world's most skilled sailors. The evidence extends beyond a single plant. In South America, the remains of chickens, an animal native to Southeast Asia, have been found at an archaeological site in Chile. Radiocarbon dating places them there before Columbus set sail. This creates a startling image, a two-way exchange where Polynesian voyagers might have reached the coast of South America, sharing meals and livestock before returning home with new crops. Could the great Polynesian canoes, the heirs to the Lapita tradition, have completed this final, epic leg of human expansion? The clues are not confined to biology. Some linguists point to shared words, like the Polynesian term for sweet potato, kumara, which bears a striking resemblance to its name in some Andean languages. Artistic echoes also appear, with similar fishhook designs and religious symbols appearing on both sides of the Pacific Divide. These connections are hotly debated, with skeptics arguing for independent invention or more recent introductions. Yet the cumulative weight of these anomalies is difficult to ignore. They challenge the long-held idea that the Americas developed in complete isolation for thousands of years. The possibility expands to even more speculative shores. Could a storm-blown Chinese junk have reached the New World? Might a Roman merchant vessel, riding the currents, have drifted to a foreign coast? While evidence for these specific voyages remains thin, the very question forces us to reimagine the daring of ancient mariners. Their world was not defined by the maps we have since drawn for them. It was a world of ocean currents and star paths where the will to explore could lead anywhere. This is not to rewrite history, but to deepen its mystery. It suggests that our planet's story is one of occasional, fleeting contact, of seeds and ideas cast across the water, taking root in distant soil. These potential encounters, however brief, hint at a human story even more interconnected than we ever believed. A narrative where the lines between ancient worlds were not solid, but dotted, waiting to be connected by the next adventurous voyage. A sea of grass-connected worlds, the Eurasian steppe, an unbroken expanse from the edge of Europe to the borders of China, functioned as the planet's greatest overland corridor. It was not an empty wilderness, but a dynamic superhighway for nomadic pastoralists, cultures whose lives were defined by movement. Groups like the Scythians and the Xiongnu did not simply wander this landscape. They mastered it, becoming the essential link between the great settled empires that flourished on its fringes. They were the indispensable middlemen of the ancient world, bridging the gap between Rome and Han China. Their caravans and mounted parties carried tangible goods, trading swift horses, warm furs, and other commodities for the luxuries of civilization: Chinese silk, Persian metalwork, and Mediterranean grains. But their most profound impact was as couriers of culture itself. A shared artistic vision blossomed across this entire region, known today as the animal style. From the gold work of the Black Sea to the belt plaques of Mongolia, we find the same vibrant motifs: creatures locked in dynamic combat, stags with impossibly elongated antlers, and feline predators curled into intricate shapes. This was not a coincidence. It was a visual language that spoke of a shared nomadic identity, a common set of beliefs and aesthetic values that flowed effortlessly across thousands of miles. These mobile cultures were also vectors of innovation and challenge. The composite bow, a revolutionary weapon of layered wood, horn, and sinew, spread along these routes, changing the face of warfare from the Mediterranean to the Yellow River. Advanced saddle designs and mounted warfare tactics were exchanged and refined. Even the movement of people, sometimes under difficult circumstances, and the unintended spread of illness, reshaped the demographic and immunological landscapes of entire continents. The steppe was the silent, powerful engine of continental change. For thousands of years, the pulse of goods, ideas, and people along this grassy highway dictated the rise and fall of empires, proving that sometimes the most powerful forces in history are not the walled cities, but the open plains that connect them. The strength of bronze, the metal that built empires, relied on a hidden weakness. To create this revolutionary alloy, smiths needed two ingredients, copper and tin. While copper ores could be found in many mountainous regions across the ancient world, tin was a different story. It was the ghost metal, incredibly rare and scattered in only a few isolated deposits. This scarcity transformed a simple mineral into a commodity of immense strategic value, forcing civilizations to reach across continents to secure it. The search for tin forged one of history's most essential and far-reaching networks. From the misty cliffs of Cornwall in Britain to the rugged highlands of Anatolia and the remote reaches of Central Asia, the tin was mined, often in perilous conditions. Then began its epic journey. It traveled overland on donkey caravans, was shipped across the Mediterranean in Phoenician hulls, and moved along river systems. Its ultimate destination, the great bronze workshops of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Aegean. A single tin ingot from Cornwall could end up being alloyed with Cypriot copper in a Syrian workshop, its final form a weapon wielded by a Hittite warrior. This was globalization in its most fundamental state. The hunger for tin did not just sustain trade, it actively drove exploration and colonization. Archaeological evidence suggests that Mycenaean Greeks may have established outposts in the Western Mediterranean, not just for trade, but to control access to the tin routes coming from the Atlantic. The Phoenicians, those master mariners, pushed beyond the Strait of Gibraltar, founding colonies like Gadir, modern-day Cadiz, to tap into the Iberian tin trade and the legendary sources in the far north. Securing this resource was a matter of survival, a national priority that could dictate foreign policy and fund dangerous expeditions into unknown lands. This deep dependence, however, created a profound vulnerability. Around 1200 BC, the vibrant, interconnected world of the Late Bronze Age suffered a catastrophic collapse. Great cities from Greece to the Levant were burned and abandoned, empires crumbled, and literacy itself vanished from many regions. The causes were likely a tangled web of factors, including climate shifts and population movements. But many scholars point to a central thread in this unraveling, the disruption of the tin trade. If the complex, interlocking supply chains that delivered tin from Cornwall and Afghanistan to the royal foundries were severed, the entire system would have ground to a halt. Armies could not be rearmed, tools could not be replaced, and the very symbol of elite power and technological advancement would become a fading memory. The story of tin is a powerful lesson in interconnectivity. It reveals that the ascent of civilization was built not just on local ingenuity, but on a fragile web of global supply, a web that, when torn, could bring an age of wonders to a silent and sudden end. The scent of frankincense wafting through a Roman temple began as sticky resin on a tree in a land the Romans never saw. Far beyond the trade in spices and stones, ancient networks carried objects of pure spirit, items whose value was measured not in weight but in faith. This was a commerce of the soul, where the most sought-after treasures were those that could bridge the gap between humanity and the divine. From the arid highlands of southern Arabia, caravans carried frankincense and myrrh, two aromatic resins that were as precious as gemstones. Harvesting them was a delicate art, involving precise cuts in the bark of rare trees to make the resin bleed and harden into tears. These fragrant tears were then transported on a long, perilous journey north, fueling the spiritual life of temples and royal ceremonies from Jerusalem to Babylon and eventually to Rome. The demand was eternal, for these scents were believed to carry prayers to the heavens, purify sacred spaces, and honor the final journey of individuals. The merchants who controlled this trade, like the Nabateans with their spectacular rock-cut city of Petra, grew immensely wealthy, their entire economy built on the spiritual needs of half the world. But it was not only smoke and scent that traveled. The very forms of the gods themselves were on the move. Skilled artisans in one culture would carve a cult statue from a rare, imported wood or stone, and that representation of a deity could become so revered that its likeness would be requested by a distant kingdom. Through trade, artistic styles and religious iconography flowed between civilizations. An image of a goddess from Mesopotamia might find its way onto a seal in the Indus Valley, her features subtly adapting to local tastes. The Greek goddess Aphrodite, for instance, shows clear influences from her Eastern counterpart, Astarte, a connection made possible by the constant movement of merchants and their goods across the Mediterranean. This exchange often required a special class of merchant, one entrusted not just with valuable cargo, but with items considered holy. These traders were more than businessmen. They were intermediaries in a sacred trust, sometimes doubling as pilgrims on a journey to a distant shrine. Their role ensured that a sacred object was treated with the proper respect throughout its long journey, maintaining its ritual purity from its point of origin to its final, hallowed destination. This constant, respectful exchange of sacred objects had a profound and lasting effect. It allowed for the cross-pollination of beliefs, leading to what scholars call syncretism, where the gods and rituals of one culture blend with those of another. As a statue of a foreign deity arrived in a new city, its story and powers might be woven into local mythology, creating a new, composite figure that spoke to a wider array of people. This blending of spiritual ideas, facilitated by trade routes, helped pave the way for the later rise of universalizing religions like Buddhism and Christianity. These faiths were able to spread so effectively along established trade roads precisely because those paths were already well trodden by merchants carrying not just goods, but a deep understanding of cross-cultural spiritual exchange. The desire to connect with the divine, it turns out, was one of the most powerful economic engines in the ancient world, proving that the deepest connections are often those we cannot see, but can only feel and smell and believe in. The climate itself was a silent merchant, one who could open a path with gentle rains or seal it with relentless drought. These ancient trade networks, for all their sophistication, were not immune to the planet's shifting moods. A change in weather patterns could rewrite the entire map of human connection, elevating one civilization while dooming another to silence. During the Neolithic period, the Sahara was a far greener place, a landscape of savannas and lakes that supported a diversity of life. This milder climate created natural corridors for movement, allowing ideas and goods to flow more freely between North Africa and the regions to the south. The rock art depicting those horse-drawn chariots stands as a testament to a time when crossing the desert was a different kind of challenge, but then the world changed. A long-term aridification process began to desiccate the land, transforming grasslands into sand seas. The old, easier paths vanished beneath the dunes, forcing a radical adaptation. Trade did not end, it simply shifted onto the backs of the only creatures capable of surviving the new, harsher reality, the camels. This environmental pressure forged the specialized Trans-Saharan caravan routes we know from later history, proving that commerce could evolve, but only by becoming far more difficult and expensive. A more dramatic crisis unfolded around 2200 BCE, a period of global cooling and drought that seems to have touched every corner of the civilized world. In Mesopotamia, the mighty Akkadian Empire, which had united the region through military might and a vast administrative network, suddenly fractured. Ancient records speak of calamity, of salt blowing through the fields, and of famine so severe that people resorted to desperate measures. Modern science provides a chilling corroboration. Ice core samples from Greenland and sediment cores from the Gulf of Oman show a sharp spike in aridity right at this time, a climatic event of truly global proportions. The lifeblood of the Akkadian state was its agricultural surplus, which fed the cities and funded the trade that brought in vital resources like tin and timber. When the rains failed for generations, that surplus vanished. The intricate web of exchange that connected Mesopotamia to Anatolia, the Levant, and the Indus Valley began to fray and then snap. Port cities were abandoned, overland routes became too dangerous, and the system collapsed under the weight of a changing sky. This was not an isolated event. From the pyramids of Egypt to the citadels of the Aegean, this period marks a horizon of collapse and transformation. The disruption was so severe that it reset the course of history, creating a dark age from which new societies would eventually emerge. The story of the Akkadian Empire serves as a powerful lesson in fragility. Its political and economic structures, however impressive, were built on a foundation of climatic stability that could not be guaranteed. A shift in the monsoon winds or a prolonged drought could unravel generations of progress in a matter of decades. This interplay between climate and commerce forces us to see these networks not as static lines on a map, but as living, breathing systems. They pulsed with the rhythm of the seasons, they flourished with abundant harvests, and they withered when the rains did not come. The rise and fall of empires was often a story written not just by kings and armies, but by the invisible, unstoppable force of a changing world. Our own bodies carry a forgotten map of these ancient journeys. Modern science now reads this map written in genetic code, revealing that trade routes were not just for goods, but for people. Archaeogenetics, the study of ancient DNA, is uncovering the human stories behind the artifacts, providing biological proof of the connections archaeology could only hint at. One of the most profound discoveries comes from the spread of farming. By analyzing the remains of individuals who lived thousands of years ago, scientists have traced a massive migration of Neolithic farmers from Anatolia in modern Turkey into Europe. These were not just ideas traveling from village to village. This was a movement of people, families carrying their knowledge of agriculture, their languages, and their DNA, slowly blending with and reshaping the local populations of hunter-gatherers. This genetic signal is a permanent record of a cultural revolution, written in the blueprint of life itself. The same genetic tools illuminate contact across the vastness of Asia. Studies reveal a steady flow of genes between Central Asian populations and the people of the Indian subcontinent, a slow, centuries-long intermingling along the corridors that would later be known as the Silk Road. This was not a sudden invasion, but a gradual blending, a testament to the marriages, friendships, and shared communities that grew up around the caravans and market towns. These were personal connections, the kind that leave a mark on our very cells. Even the movement of illness can be traced along these routes. Scientists have recovered the genetic code of the plague bacterium from ancient skeletons in Eurasia. finding that strains of this disease were moving along trade networks thousands of years earlier than previously believed. The same routes that carried silk and spices also carried unseen passengers, reminding us that connection always carries a complex cost. This new evidence adds a deeply personal dimension to the story. A single genome from an individual buried far from their homeland is no longer just a skeleton. It is a person who lived, traveled, and formed relationships across cultural divides. Their DNA confirms the intimate human contact that made the ancient world a surprisingly small place, long before we ever thought it could be. A complex transaction in ancient Mesopotamia required no coins changing hands. Instead, a merchant might record a debt of 5 shekels of silver on a clay tablet, a promise to be settled months later with a shipment of cedar wood from Lebanon. This was the sophisticated reality of pre-monetary trade, an economy built on trust, record-keeping, and universally accepted standards. The foundation was commodity money, where the value of everyday goods became the yardstick for all commerce. In Mesopotamia, the shekel was not a coin, but a specific weight of silver. A bushel of barley, a jar of oil, or a measure of wool could all be valued in terms of this silver weight, creating a fluid system of exchange that transcended simple barter. This required precision. Across the ancient world, systems of standardized weights and measures emerged as the bedrock of fair trade. Royal authorities produced stone weights in carefully graded sizes, often shaped like ducks or other animals, and stamped them with official seals. A merchant from Egypt could travel to a market in the Levant, confident that the local stone weight marked 1 shekel would be identical to the one he used back home. This mutual recognition of value was a form of early international law, enabling commerce to flow smoothly across linguistic and cultural barriers. This intricate system was managed by powerful institutions. Temples and royal palaces often acted as the central banks of their day, standardizing measures, storing vast quantities of grain and metal, and extending credit to trading ventures. They enforced trade protocols and provided a legal framework for resolving disputes. Merchant guilds, associations of traders who shared knowledge and resources, operated across vast distances, creating networks of trust that were as valuable as any cargo. They established agencies in foreign ports where a trusted representative would manage sales and purchases on behalf of partners back home. The entire edifice rested on a concept we might find surprisingly modern: the power of credit. Cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia are filled with records of loans, promises to pay, and complex partnerships. A ship's captain might receive a loan of silver to fund his voyage, with the agreement to repay the principal plus a share of the profits upon his return. This ability to create and enforce financial obligations across time and space was the true engine of large-scale trade. It meant that wealth was not just the physical goods you possessed, but the promises others had made to you, promises that were legally binding and socially enforced. These ancient economies were not primitive barter systems. They were complex, interconnected markets operating on principles of contract law, standardized valuation, and financial credit that are deeply familiar to us today. The invention of coinage would later simplify these transactions, but it did not invent the underlying economic sophistication that had already been woven into the fabric of civilization, one clay tablet at a time. Our daily language is a museum of these ancient journeys. Every time we ask for sugar in our coffee, we are speaking a word that has traveled for thousands of years. It began as Sarkara in Sanskrit, the ancient language of India, a term for the gritty, crushed crystals of sugarcane. Persian traders adopted it as shakar, and Arab merchants carried it westward as sakar. It entered medieval Europe through the bustling ports of Sicily and Spain, eventually becoming the English word sugar. This single term charts a perfect course along the old spice routes, a linguistic fossil of the global sweet tooth that connected South Asia to the Mediterranean world. The names for the fruits we eat tell a similar story. The word orange traces back through Persian and Arabic to the Sanskrit naranga, but its ultimate origin is likely from a language family in southern China, where the fruit was first cultivated. The path of tea is even more telling. The English word tea comes from the Min Chinese dialect spoken in the port of Xiamen, where Dutch traders first encountered it. But in many other languages, including Russian che and Arabic she, the word derives from the Mandarin cha, reflecting the overland routes of the Northern Silk Road. The very word you use for this beverage reveals whether your ancestors first received it by land or by sea. This was not just about goods, but about the concepts that came with them. The mathematical concept of the zero, along with the numerals we use today, traveled from India to the Islamic world and then into Europe. The Arabic word sifr, meaning empty, became the Latin zephyrum and eventually the English zero. Our modern vocabulary for calculation is built on words that moved along the same intellectual highways as spices and silk. Language became the ultimate container for these exchanges, a living archive of contact. A sailor's slang, a merchant's shorthand, the local name for a foreign spice. These terms were picked up, adapted, and woven into new tongues. They are the unbroken threads that connect us to the markets of antiquity, proving that the most enduring cargo of those ancient networks was not the goods themselves, but the words we still use to name them. Yet so much of this story remains hidden, waiting on the ocean floor or locked within an unread script. Imagine the sunken ships still resting in the deep, their hulls filled with cargo that could redefine our understanding of ancient economies. What trade goods, what personal effects, what entire chapters of connection lie preserved in those silent, watery graves? The decipherment of the Indus Valley script represents another grand key. If we could finally read their clay seals and tablets, we would hear their side of the story. We would know the names of their merchants, the terms of their treaties, and the precise nature of their dealings with far-off Mesopotamia. It would transform a silent trading partner into a vocal protagonist in the epic of the Bronze Age. Our tools for uncovering these secrets are growing more powerful every day. Isotopic analysis allows scientists to trace the life history of an individual from their teeth, revealing where they were born and the journeys they undertook. Advanced satellite imagery can detect the faint outlines of buried settlements and ancient trackways beneath the sand of the Sahara or the dense canopy of the Amazon, hinting at trade networks we never knew existed. LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to map the ground from the air, is already revealing sprawling, interconnected cities in jungles long thought to be pristine wilderness. Each of these technological leaps promises to illuminate another dark corner of the map. The story of ancient trade is not a closed book. It is a living field of discovery where every new fragment of pottery, every new genetic sequence, and every newly translated word has the potential to reveal another thread in the intricate web that connected our ancestors. The greatest mystery is not what we have found, but what remains just beyond our grasp, waiting for the next curious mind to bring it into the light. Our journey along these ancient superhighways reveals a world far more interconnected than we ever imagined, where a shell from the Maldives could be currency in China and obsidian from Turkey could shape tools in Egypt. These networks were the lifelines of civilization, pumping goods, ideas, and innovations across continents and fostering the rise and fall of empires. They remind us that globalization is not a modern invention but a fundamental part of the human story. As we reflect on this shared heritage, consider how the choices of ancient traders and travelers still echo in our languages, cultures, and technologies today. If you were fascinated by these hidden connections that shaped our world, subscribe for more journeys into the depths of history and share your thoughts on the most surprising ancient trade fact in the comments below.